A Russian gas transiting through Ukraine to Europe has dropped drastically after Kyiv declared plans to redirect the supplies elsewhere. A Russian energy giant Gazprom has decried the move, saying it is impossible to reroute all the supplies. But Ukraine blamed Moscow, accusing Russian forces in the occupied area of interfering with operations. Meanwhile, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has brushed off the European Union's plans to reduce reliance on Russian energy.
У нас есть достаточно покупателей наших энергоресурсов, и мы будем с ними работать. А Запад пускай платит гораздо дороже, чем он платил Российской Федерации, и пускай объясняет своему населению, почему оно должно стать беднее.
Well, let's get more from Oli Barrett. He joins us from Riga, Latvia. Oli, listening to Mr. Lavrov's remarks just there, is it a sign that the country is perhaps preparing for a possible oil embargo by the European Union?
Absolutely. Russia has been preparing for that for some time. The direction of travel has been very clear indeed. The only question really for Moscow to grapple with has been exactly what the timing would be, and that is still unclear, with the European Union still not able to reach full agreement between its member states about exactly how quickly to move in that regard. Countries like Hungary in opposition to the European Union's current proposals when it comes to how quickly to phase out supplies that come from the Russians. And so Russia has been preparing for this eventuality for some time and looking to other markets. And Moscow continues to insist that it has plenty of other places that it can sell its oil and gas and fossil fuels to. And with prices where they are at the moment, Moscow will also feel that it can continue to make a lot of money out of those supplies, which can, of course, go back into the war machine. Nonetheless, it will be a significant impact as and when the European Union does move towards more quickly phasing out Russian oil and gas, because it is up to now and has been such a major customer for the Russians.
Elsewhere, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is visiting Sweden and Finland for talks on possible NATO membership. What would you think Moscow would make of that?
Pretty clear that Moscow would be very angry about that indeed, and Russian officials have made that very clear in recent days. And of course, part of the situation we're seeing unfold in Ukraine at the moment is a response from Russia to what it sees as the threat of NATO expansion in the Eastern European region. But actually, since that invasion took place, all that we've seen when it comes to NATO in the Eastern European and Baltic region has been an expansion of NATO forces, which intelligence officials and international leaders say is simply a response to Russian aggression rather than any kind of threat to Russia. But NATO expansion in terms of membership will also be viewed very dimly by Russia. We've also got Boris Johnson today visiting Sweden and Finland ahead of what we expect to be their decision to move ahead with trying to join the NATO military alliance. And Boris Johnson has essentially been trying to fill a bit of a gap, a bit of a grey zone, which would appear between the moment that Sweden and Finland, in the coming days we expect, say that they want to join the NATO military alliance, and the period at which they actually get to sign up and get to join. When you are a NATO member, you have those assurances from your fellow NATO members about your defence if you are to be attacked by a foreign aggressor. But of course, Sweden and Finland have fears about what will happen in the intervening period before they are fully signed up and sealed as a NATO member. And Boris Johnson is signing defence deals with Sweden and Finland today to provide assurances in that intervening period.
Oli Barrett in Riga. Thank you.
On the ground, Ukraine has reported several battlefield gains near Kharkiv. That's its second largest city. Kyiv has reclaimed 4 settlements north of the city. Ukraine says Russian forces are attempting to prevent its troops from moving further towards the border in the region and are attempting to recapture the town of Rubizhne. Footage circulating shows a Russian tank exploding in Kharkiv after being struck by Ukrainian forces wielding grenade launchers. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense says that the attack was carried out on a T-90M. That's Russia's most advanced tank. As losses mount on the Russian side, Western intelligence predicts the war in Ukraine will drag on. Washington says President Vladimir Putin may be preparing for a long-haul conflict, and that even if Moscow achieves its goals in the eastern Donbas region, it will not spell the end of the war. For more, John Gambrell joins us live now from Lviv. John, Ukraine's military, its counteroffensive, it seems to be paying off. How significant is this? And will they be able to continue doing so in other areas?
It's interesting. You know, the start of this war saw Russia really try to rush in and blitz Kyiv, the capital, and take it in a couple of days. They failed to do that. So now Russia has focused instead on the eastern part of the country to try to expand the territory that it holds in these two separatist regions. Now, the Ukrainians have been able to push back from Kharkiv in the last couple of days, and analysts and U.S. officials say this is because the Ukrainians are focusing entirely on one specific part of the front line, using long-range fire like howitzers and drones, as well as close-range attacks with rocket-propelled grenades, like you mentioned before, and anti-tank weapons to be able to beat back the Russians. Now, the going is slow on both sides. Ukraine is making slow gains. Russia is making slow gains in some other sectors of that front line. But there is a beginning to be a thought among some that Ukraine may be able to push back Russia all the way to the border in that region, but there's still a longer fight ahead if they want to take more territory.
Slow going and tough going on the ground in Ukraine. And meantime, John, the leader of the breakaway Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, he says that there are no civilians left at the Azovstal steel plant and that Russian forces' hands are no longer tied. Does this mean, though, that Russia is going to start an all-out assault? What's the situation like in Mariupol now?
The Ukrainian fighters who are still inside of the steel mill describe the situation as continuing to be very dire. They say they're continually pummeled by airstrikes from aircraft, by missile strikes from rocket launchers on trucks and artillery, as well as some probes by Russian troops around the perimeter of this giant steel mill. They're still holed up inside of these tunnels. Now, This Russian allied officials' comments today do suggest that they may try to increase the fire there, but it has been pretty intense already. And it also comes as two wives from those fighters are actually at the Vatican speaking to Pope Francis about trying to find either an international organization or a third-party country to try to evacuate them. Now, those are still preliminary discussions right now, but it does show that even those fighters who've said they're not willing to surrender realize that the situation is just going to get more grim as time goes on, and they're potentially looking for a way out.
John, thank you for that. John Gambrell there in Lviv, Ukraine.